Are you like Enid Sinclair from Netflix's Wednesday? Maybe you're feeling stuck and trapped, and this is before she wolfed out. Maybe you feel like you're not living up to your potential. On top of that, you might also feel like you're letting people down, as if you're disappointing people. If this sounds like you, stick around, because we're going to psychoanalyze Enid Sinclair. We're going to dive into her defense mechanisms, we're going to understand her as a person, and we're going to figure out what triggered her wolf out and what was bubbling underneath the surface that needed to burst out that led to the wolf out. So let's dive in. First things first is we need to understand Enid as a person. So yes, she's bubbly and colorful and sociable and out there, but what do all these features actually mean? Who is she genuinely, and what is her mask? Like I mentioned, Enid is colorful. She loves colors. She loves the rainbow. She is very colorful in terms of her personality. She is very warm, she is very loving, she's very caring. You can see this when she meets Wednesday for the first time. She goes to introduce herself and then tries to give a hug, and Wednesday is put off by that. So no hugs for Wednesday, but Enid is about giving out free hugs. She is also fiercely loyal. She has a group of solid friends, and she really cares about people. She cares about her inner circle. She even cares about Wednesday when she notices in the beginning that Wednesday couldn't even give an F about her. But she continued to try to break through and to try to build that relationship. And when they did, when Wednesday and Enid formed a relationship, Enid took that to heart, even more so, I think, than typically people do, even more so than people generally do. And I think this is because she views people like a lifeline. So it's not only having a solid group of friends that she cares about, but for Enid, and we'll explore this a little bit more, friends and people in her circle, that's her lifeline, that's her safety. That's a way for her to be taken care of, in a sense. So she's loyal to them, but they're also loyal to her, at least for the most part, excluding Wednesday. Well, not necessarily excluding Wednesday. If you want to know more about psychoanalyzing Wednesday, then take a look at this video here, where I go into depth about some of the interesting unconscious associations with Wednesday and what feelings can manifest that she tries to hide. Spoiler alert, Wednesday is warmer and more nurturing than you actually think. Another part of Enid is that she is a social butterfly. She loves to know everybody's business. She loves to be on social media. She has her own following. She influences people in her own way. And I think this goes back to, at least in my opinion, my theory here, is that she needs to be connected somehow because she feels tremendously disconnected before she wolfs out. She doesn't feel like she's part of the group. She's an outcast, but not really an outcast. So she's a werewolf, but she hasn't wolfed out. So this is very difficult for her. I think the social media part and the need for friends is kind of like a defense and a need to preserve those relationships as a way to avoid maybe some of the heartache that she experiences because she hasn't wolfed out yet. So when we're talking about Enid's ability to be social, we're also talking about how that is a defense in and of itself. Sure, it's great that you have friends and you're social and you're interacting with other people and you're living your best life. But in addition to that, and this is specifically for Enid, we see that this can also be a defense against feeling her feels, feeling the pain, like I mentioned, what it's like not to wolf out, to be disconnected, even from her family, which I believe she mentioned in the first season, her entire family, including her siblings, have wolfed out. So she's the odd person out. So the social component, I think, reflects a need for external validation. It's difficult, I think, for Enid to look at herself and feel as though that she has this intrinsic value. So she has a value just for being human, just for being her. But in her mind, that's completely erased. So the value that she needs to create is actually through the perception of other people. So if other people view her as likable and all of these positive emotions associated with that likability, well, then she's going to get that validation. She's going to feel valued. But that can shift depending on people's perspective. So one day you might be admired and everything is going well, people like you and you're feeling on top of the world, you're feeling great about yourself. But then all of a sudden, let's say you have a negative review. You have a poor evaluation by somebody else, or someone said something harsh to you, or someone is having a bad day and cuts you off as you're driving. This can significantly impact the way in which you validate yourself, or the way in which you feel as though you have intrinsic value or not. So external validation, right, is not sustainable, because what happens is that can be fleeting. Especially if you have those negative evaluations that could be skewed based on someone's perception or day of the week or situation. So having that internal validation, having that intrinsic value, knowing that you are valuable just because you are you, induces this sense of confidence, induces this sense of being okay with oneself even if somebody else doesn't accept us. But for Enid, she needs everyone to accept her. She needs people in her corner, and we'll discuss why. According to Donald Winnicott, we talk about the false self when it comes to the psychoanalytic perspective of the self. We have a true self, we have a false self. Well, for Enid Sinclair, what is the false self? I'll tell you one thing. Her bubbly nature, her cheerfulness, even though that these are traits and part of her personality, is also used as a defense. So think about it. She's bubbly, she's interactive, she's connecting with other people, talking with other people, probably about either what's going on in the school or what's going on with them. Enid, unless there's a crisis situation, doesn't always talk about herself. And if she does talk about herself, it's usually in some form of social context, meaning that part of the fabricated false sense of self is this bubbly, happy, cheerful person all the time, 24/7. So that's fake. It's understandable that someone can be excited and happy more often than not, but it is impossible for someone to be happy 24/7, all of the time, all day, every day. So she's masking something. I believe, and this is my theory, that she is masking her rage. She has this unconscious bubbling rage within her. And as a result, she has this unconscious bubbling rage within her. And because of that, maybe out of fear, she represses it, right? She shoves it down. Very unconsciously, she buries it. So what rises to the surface? Well, this happy-go-lucky individual, as if everything is okay and she's living her best life all of the time, right? Yeah, what's up, life, right? No, right? It's not all sugar candy and rainbows and all that crap. No, Enid has an unconscious secret. So let's peel back the layers here. Before we peel back the layers with regards to the unconscious rage, it's very interesting when Enid actually connects with the rage, it no longer becomes unconscious but is then conscious. She then wolfs out. So think about this, right? Her character is building in season 1. So we see aspects of her. She's trying to connect with Wednesday, trying to build that relationship, right? Trying to get close. And over time, they do. So think about the last episode in the first season. Enid is very worried about Wednesday. She's very worried about Wednesday's well-being. Is Wednesday going to die? What's going to happen? So out of just her fierce loyalty and this almost like a mama bear needing to protect her friend Wednesday, she actually connects with her anger. And she doesn't realize that all of a sudden she starts wolfing out. She starts transforming. She's becoming her true self, her animalistic self. She doesn't need to be socialized anymore and put in a container for society to love. Oh, here you go. Oh, I love you so much. No, F that. She's all about fighting, kicking ass, saving Wednesday, and helping the school. And she probably doesn't even know that in the beginning, right? As she's starting to wolf out, all she really wants to do is protect Wednesday. So we have this false sense of self where Enid is bubbly, cheerful all the time, but she's hiding a secret, which is her unconscious rage. When she connects with it, she wolfs out. It's pretty amazing. She kicks Tyler's ass. Spoiler alert, Tyler's a hide. She kicks his ass 10 ways to Sunday. It is fabulous because we see a completely different side of Enid. In the beginning, it looks like she's this beautiful, cheerful, wonderful little marshmallow that needs to be protected, but she's the one who's actually defending. She's the one who's fighting. She connected with her rage. But where did this unconscious rage stem from? Now that's a good question. So where did the rage come from, right? So now we understand what triggered, or we have a theory of what triggered the transformation and Enid wolfing out, which is her unconscious rage coming to the surface. But right now, this is just speculation. This is just an educated guess based on various psychoanalytic theories. So if we think about the rage, it wasn't just there when Enid was born, like a part of her brain. It was developed over time. So who do you suspect contributed to this rage? Leave a comment below. Who do you think? Who contributed to her anger? Who pissed her off? My theory is that her mother is the source of her rage. So think about this. We only met her mother in one episode when family came to Nevermore, and as we see, it is a disaster. Enid is feeling so emotionally overwhelmed. So we have mom, who is very pushy. She's very cold. She's very matter of fact. You wolfed out or you didn't wolf out. Where are you here? Because if you don't wolf out, I'm going to disown you. Even though she doesn't say that directly, this is what we get when we analyze the content, the message, the information that mom says to Enid, right? We see that she also wanted to send Enid away to a camp to help spark her wolf-like persona. But Enid was so offended by that, as if her mom isn't accepting of who she is. So we see this in the scene. We also see dad being very passive. He doesn't really communicate as much. He seems to go along with what mom is saying. And this is very upsetting, at least from my perspective as an audience member. I'm viewing this and I'm sensing that Enid is feeling very sad, very detached, as if she has no one. This is fundamental when we're talking about understanding our sense of self and understanding our trauma. So this is the dynamic that we see in an episode. We don't have any information about Enid's past, unlike Wednesday, where we might have some other movies that Tim Burton created to reference when Wednesday was younger. We don't have any information about Enid. So right now it's just speculation. We're just guessing, providing educated guesses, and seeing if there's evidence to support that guess. Based on the interaction with her mother in that one episode, my theory is that Enid grew up with a very difficult childhood. I don't think that she had a very strong connection with mom growing up. Maybe even during infancy, there might have been something that was going on. Maybe mom was detached for whatever reason. Maybe Enid has older brothers, older siblings, sisters, and they needed more attention, or they needed attention, and maybe she's one of the babies, or is the baby out of the litter. And now this is a problem because mom is hyper-focused on everybody else and maybe not paying attention to Enid as an infant. So what does this mean? That means that mom and Enid didn't create that secure bond. So what happens? An insecure attachment forms. So if mom is unavailable, if mom is not satisfying baby, feeding baby on time, changing baby on time, then baby's going to continually cry. Enid might have been continually crying, experiencing more frustration than pleasure. And as a result, that frustration stays. So if someone is going through developmental phases, they might be stuck at a particular point in their development because of that heightened frustration. So now we have an insecure attachment established during infancy. Does that change during childhood and adolescence? Well, it doesn't look like it has. Again, based on the episode, we're speculating that the relationship has always been difficult with Enid and her mom. So there isn't this sense of closeness. And that's a big problem. One, because daughters and mothers, the relationship and the interaction there is so vital, because then daughter learns through mom how to be a woman, right? If daughter identifies as a woman. So Enid identifies as female, but didn't have a great female role model or mentor. She didn't have that nurturing, warm, loving mother. But yet somehow, some way, which is very interesting, Enid grows up to have these traits, being very empathetic, being very warm, right? The opposite of what her mother is and how she is in terms of her personality traits. So as a result of this difficult upbringing, I think Enid over time experienced anger, whether mom wasn't there, such as, think about this for example, Enid might be riding her bike, learning how to ride her bike, she falls off, scrapes her knee. She goes to mom, starts crying, "Mom, I'm hurt, I'm sad, I need help." Mom's not there. Mom says, "Do it yourself," or is very cold, invalidates Enid. Right? So this could be a situation that happened to Enid. This could also be a situation that happened to you. And as a result, especially if more of those situations happen, it compounds, and then this very difficult, this estranged, this tension-like relationship begins to build and build and build. So for someone like Enid, who wants to connect with more of the bubbly, positive part of her psyche, her persona, then it's understandable that the part of her that experiences this rage, this need for maybe revenge towards mom, because mom did this horrendous thing to her, which is leave her alone with her big emotions and leave her alone to figure out what it means to be a woman, then of course Enid is going to experience bits of anger, bits of rage, variations of anger as she grows up. But it doesn't look like she was able to express it. She doesn't look like she was able, at least again, based on the episode that we saw, that she wasn't able to express herself maybe growing up, maybe stood her ground for the first time during that episode where she said, "No, Mom, I'm not going to this camp. I'm gonna wolf out when I wolf out, and if I don't, then you just accept it." And then Dad was very loving and nurturing towards Enid during that episode. So that was a very heartfelt scene. I really appreciated that Dad swooped in. Even though Dad was very silent in the beginning, we can see that he definitely cares for Enid and he wants the best for her. Even though he supports his wife, he still cares for his daughter and doesn't want to see her suffer. Mom, it seems like she could care less. If this was you and you've experienced this relationship with your mother, no wonder why you struggle in relationships, or no wonder why you found it difficult to find a sense of self, find a sense of empathy, warmth within you, that you can actually be that way with other people. So reflect, see what you did to grow. How did you get from that point not experiencing or witnessing that nurturing, loving, idealistic mom, but you still came out the other side? You might still be struggling in your relationships, or sometimes in your relationships, or with a sense of self-esteem, confidence, or feeling like you have a fractured identity, but yet you're still warm, you're still loving, and you're still caring. Like, that's huge. So really pat yourself on the back, really reflect, what did you do to get here? And if you're the type of person that had a terrible relationship with mom growing up, and now you hate people, people suck, and you don't want to interact with people, then think about what led you to that point. So even though mom was so harsh, or you've been bullied in school and people are so terrible, what accumulated over the hours, over the weeks, months, years that led to you feeling as though people suck? Because even though it can be true, not everybody is going to be wonderful all the time. Generally, people are actually great. If you stop and you ask for directions, usually people will give it to you. If you, let's say you're a tourist and you want to take a picture, a family picture, but you don't want to do the whole selfie thing, right? You'll ask someone. Majority of the time, they'll take the picture and they'll give the phone back to you. Other times, you'll have assholes that will take your phone or do something stupid in the sense of break it or whatever. You'll have people that are like that. But that doesn't necessarily mean you need to filter in information, filter in relational information that everyone now is going to be an asshole. No, right? 20% of people are assholes, 20% of people are wonderful and loving and caring, and then there's variations in the middle, right? So we can have a whole different perspective if we really understand how we got to the point of hating people. Like Wednesday. How did Wednesday get to that point? Even though it's part of her personality to a certain extent, but how did she get to that point? Something must have happened to her multiple times that have compounded over the years that led her to position herself in this way when in contact with somebody else. So be mindful. What has happened to you and how is it affecting you now? Because unconscious driving forces are continually influencing us positively and negatively. And if we don't understand how our mind works or the aspects of our mind, if we don't psychoanalyze what's going on with us, then it's going to be really difficult to see where we're going or to monitor our behavior to ensure that we are on track with either meeting our goals or mental growth or things like that. We can switch on autopilot and we can just be told what to do and then just do it. But that's not living life on your terms. That's not living your true self, according to Donald Winnicott. The emergence of the true self for Enid comes when she wolfs out. And it's so important that we see this not only in the final episode of the first season, but in the second season, we also see Enid's character develop. She was with Ajax before she wolfed out, and then following her wolf out, she met somebody else. And she said that, specifically to Wednesday, that she feels that Ajax doesn't really understand. He doesn't understand who she is as a person because she's changed. She's connected with a big part of her psyche where she was able to synthesize a part of herself. She didn't have this fractured psyche anymore where her psyche was split. One part living a life that is in line with her genuine sense of self, right? Her wolfness, her likability and all of that. And then this false sense of self, right? This mask hiding behind this bubbly nature that everything is good all of the time and repressing that rage. Now, following her wolf out, she has unified these parts of the psyche. So she's able to express herself even when she's frustrated, when she's angry, a little bit more so. She's a completely different person now. And this happens more often than not. When we change, sometimes our relationships, we just grow apart. We grow apart from our loved ones. We grow apart from our romantic partners, our friendships, even family. So it's understandable that people can change, right? Especially during therapy. If someone is going through the psychoanalytic therapy, then they're going to change. Their core personality is going to change over time. And when someone's core personality changes, like Enid, when she was able to understand who she is from an animalistic point and connect with her rage, then we see this tremendous amount of insight being built, and then people are acting in accordance with that insight. Because it's one thing to have insight. Some people don't have insight into their own mind. Some people do. But where the magic happens is if you have that insight and you act in accordance with that insight. So for instance, You know that your mother was an awful mother towards you growing up. She still is now. She's getting in your way. She's affecting all of your relationship, whether this is the internalized mother, so the way in which you perceive and understand mom in your mind, or this could be the mother in reality who picks up the phone or rings your doorbell to say you're a piece of shit. So if you are aware of this when it comes to mom, then you can start to understand how you were affected by that. How you were affected by that dynamic. And as you start to understand how you are affected by that dynamic, you can start to see patterns of behavior. So as you start to notice patterns of behavior and you're building this level of insight, then when it happens again, because more often than not, we repeat behaviors, especially if it's unconscious, we call it acting out. So if we're unconsciously repeating a behavior or within an enactment, an unconscious enactment with somebody else, or we are in an unconscious enactment with somebody else, meaning there's this unconscious dynamic going on underneath the relational dynamic on the surface, then it's going to be very problematic to feel like you're connected with a sense of self, feeling like you have this sense of identity, when you're just being stifled by other people's negativity and things like that. So if you don't have an understanding of what's going on in your psyche, if you don't process it, if you don't self-monitor, if you don't analyze all of these intricate and vital components, then you're not going to get to know who you are. You're going to continue to live unconsciously on autopilot, probably in line with a false sense of self, instead of living your best life, living your true self. Whether it's an animalistic part of you that needs to come out, maybe you need to be a little bit more spontaneous, you're just too rigid, you're too structured, right? Or maybe it's an opposition, right? You're so disorganized, maybe you need more structure. Allow yourself to dictate your future by having insight and acting in accordance with that insight. Otherwise, you're going to continue feeling stuck, you're going to continue feeling trapped, and you're never going to symbolically wolf out. So as we discussed, and I'm going to highlight this again, some of the defenses that Enid uses is actually very common. Some are primary defenses, some are secondary defenses. So primary defenses are developed during childhood. So denial, repression are more primary, more basic defenses, right? So we're either going to forget something or we're not going to register something. So it's just going to be buried in the unconscious, right? We're either sweeping it under the rug or it didn't even happen at all. So those are primary defenses. Secondary defenses come a little bit later, come once our brain has developed a little bit more and our prefrontal cortex is advanced in such a way as we're able to reflect, we're able to analyze, we're able to do a little bit more. So here is where we'll get certain defense mechanisms like reaction formation, rationalization, intellectualization, things like that. So when we're talking about Enid's specific defenses, and I've already spoken a little bit about it, we're talking about one, repression. So it's not as if she's denying something and sweeping it under the rug. Oh, here's a problem and I'm sweeping it under the rug. It doesn't even register in her mind that the relationship with her mom, the rage in which that she experiences growing up, the rage she continues to experience upon interacting with mom, it's like she doesn't register any of that. So it gets buried. She doesn't even pay attention to her pain. So she can't even shoo it away because it's not even there. So that's buried way down in the unconscious, and she tries to keep it there. And that prevents her from actually wolfing out, because part of being a wolf is connecting with your animalistic parts of your psyche, right? So the id part of the psyche. And in order to do so, if you're containing that, if you're caging that, then no wonder you're not wolfing out, Enid. Another defense that I briefly talked about but didn't explain is reaction formation. So reaction formation is acting in such a way that represents the opposite of what you're actually feeling. So say for instance, you really hate someone. You're going to work and you just hate that person. You despise that person for whatever reason. But instead of having this cold shoulder maybe to this person or not really interacting with them at all, you hyper-focus on them and you interact with them more and you go out of your way to get them a coffee or a donut or whatever the case may be, and you're always chatting them up, right? So reaction formation is doing something that is in opposition with how you think, with how you feel, with how you typically behave. So when it comes to Enid specifically, her cheerful and bubbly nature could be understood as a defense. So think about this, right? She's bubbly again, she's happy, all of these things, like we mentioned, nobody is perfect, so nobody can be happy 24/7. What is she hiding? What is she masking here? She's masking that rage, right? Unconsciously, she does not want to connect with that anger. She fears, she doesn't know what's going to happen if she does connect with that rage. So having that said, she stops herself and she buries it. She denies that part. So she notices that she has feelings, but she denies those feelings. Not in accordance with mom. Mom, that's repression. But in other situations, other social situations, other dynamics where she's interacting with people, then she can deny that and shove that to the side, right? She's bubbly, she's sociable. She wants to essentially find a substitute mom through her friends. Someone that will love and care for her, that if she has very heavy emotions, that she's not going to be squashed by them. She's going to survive. It's not like she's going to die because of these emotions or feel like the world is coming to an end because of these emotions, which is probably what she felt like growing up, which is probably what you felt growing up when you didn't have that connection with your mother or both parents. So there's this sense of survival and this need to unconsciously project the ideal substitute parent. So she puts on this facade, right? She fabricates this way of being, creating a character within a character as a means to please people, so people don't leave her. And this way, she is seen as someone who is easy, someone that just naturally you get along with. Because if you are pleased, let's say by Enid, and you're Enid's friend, you're happy, she does all these things for you, she avoids confrontation, so you're never going to get into an argument. It's constantly you being happy as a result of what she's doing. Why would there be any arguments? Why would the friendship dissolve, right? She does this at an unconscious level as a way to survive because her friends are like substitute mothers. So now we have a little bit of an understanding with regards to defense mechanisms when it comes to Enid. We have an idea with regards to attachment and how the insecure attachment created during infancy and childhood has contributed to the difficult relationship that she has with her mom now, as well as contributes to the relationships that she has with other people, right? Because again, with that reaction formation defense, she's going to do what? The opposite. So she is going to be overly loving, caring with people because she needs to collect people. She needs to collect substitute mothers because her mother was insufficient. Now that we have a sense of who she is, her traits, her defenses, her attachment, now we want to understand her personality structure. So when we say personality structure, this encompasses not only traits or relational dynamics or defenses, but it encompasses all of these other dynamics as well. How people view themselves and the relationship they have with themselves, how people view the world and interact with the world. So having that said, there are bits and pieces of Enid that kind of fit different personality structures. So one, in my opinion, is the narcissistic personality structure. Now this is different than a narcissistic personality disorder. I do want to clarify that. So the narcissistic personality structure has to do, and this is specifically with Enid, has to do with her needing to be validated externally. So she doesn't have this sense of value for herself. So she needs that external validation in order to feel a sense of value. And this is probably because her mother eroded that over time, the way in which her mother treated her contributed to her feeling like crap, to her feeling as though she didn't have this sense of value, because if you're constantly put down, what value do you think that you have, right? That's so backwards, and that's so terrible for a child to grow up thinking that they are worthless, thinking that they've disappointed or angered their parent just because they exist. That is so painful for someone. So as a result of Enid not experiencing this level of love and nurturing, wasn't able to understand or formulate this intrinsic value and connect with that, so she's needing to be valued externally. She doesn't go around devaluing other people, right? This is a common criterion for narcissistic personality disorder, but what ends up happening is she actually devalues herself. When she is not externally validated, she internally devalues herself, being hard on herself, as if her life is over, the world is over, she's not good enough. In addition to the narcissistic personality structure, we have this histrionic personality structure too. We see a little bit of this with Ajax in the first season, and what we see is very interesting. So her animalistic side is coming out, and we can see this in the development of her romantic relationships and her developing as a sexual or romantic person herself. So there's this sense of also hiding the sexual part of the psyche. So remember, she's 16 years old. So at this point in time, if we're talking biologically, there's a lot that's going on in the body, right? Hormones are going awry, and we're having all sorts of feelings and interactions. So it's understandable that the exploration of a sexual self doesn't necessarily mean someone is sexually active, but an exploration of what it means to be sexual, to feel sexy, to know what it means to have an adult relationship. This begins in mid-adolescence, late adolescence. So she's starting to understand her sexual side as well. But in addition to that, there are specific traits that I wanted to highlight when it comes to the histrionic personality structure. So dramatic in terms of animated. I'm not saying dramatic in terms of someone's emotionality or what that looks like with regards to their level of emotions, but dramatic in the sense of like very animated, like over the top in terms of how one expresses oneself. I can actually relate to that because I like to be more animated. I have a wide range of emotions and I like to showcase my emotions. So when I'm excited, I'm very excited and I showcase that. And when I'm not and I'm depleted in energy, then you can tell that as well. So I can actually resonate with that histrionic part of Enid. And of course, there's the attention-seeking part of her as well. So we know on the surface level, she values people, she likes to be social, she's very warm, she's very empathetic. But underneath, we know that this is an unconscious need, a desperation for collecting substitute mothers, right? Or collecting substitute parents. Because also, and we didn't really talk about dad in this video, but if you want, we can certainly discuss dad and Enid's relationship in another video. Just leave a comment below. But if dad was removed or very passive growing up, while mom was very emotionally stunting and maybe emotionally abusive, we see that also has an impact as well. So the attention-seeking behavior is not just because of the dynamic with mom, but also stems from the passive and removed relationship that she has with dad. Dad isn't always involved, but at least what we saw in season 1, when he is involved, he is very loving, he's very caring, and he actually does soothe Enid. So as we know, all of this happens before she wolfs out. And as we can see, the barriers to her wolfing out are predominantly psychological. And it's not as if it happened or stressors were happening in season 1 alone, right? So yes, there were stressors, yes, there was a lot that's going on, but her inability to wolf out was actually a result of what happened during infancy and her overall development. Infancy, childhood, and adolescence. All her experiences, her feelings, her thoughts, interacting with other people, everything that she has experienced is in the unconscious. And before she wolfs out, it's buried. When she wolfs out, she connects with her psyche. She starts to become her genuine sense of self. She starts to live her best life that's in accordance to her genuine sense of self. So before I talk a little bit about her wolfing out and the battle between her and Tyler, first, like this video, give it a thumbs up, hit subscribe so then you have access to all of my videos. And if you like more of these videos, you want me to psychoanalyze various different characters, then let me know in the comments. If you want me to psychoanalyze Sheldon Cooper from Big Bang Theory, then let me know. Or if you want me to psychoanalyze Dean Winchester, by the by, my favorite character in one of my favorite TV shows, Supernatural, definitely leave a comment. And if you're Jensen Ackles and you want to know the psychoanalytic perspective of Dean Winchester, then please, Jensen, let me know. Okay, so we have this wonderful understanding of Enid. Again, we're just trying to peel back the layers of her psyche, trying to understand the mechanics of her mind, right? That builds to the point, the climax of her wolfing out. My favorite episode. And then she attacks Tyler. She is a badass, in my opinion. Like, Wednesday is like part of me. I grew up with Wednesday. I grew up with Tim Burton movies. Tim Burton is one of my favorite, beyond favorite directors. I think his mind, his artistry is so incredible. And it's just so amazing to see all of these different aspects of his mind, come to life. But nevertheless, I can go on and on about Tim Burton, but I love the fight scene. And the reason why I love the fight scene is because Enid comes out of her shell, not just in terms of wolfing out, but think about this. She is a people pleaser, right? To a certain extent, she's very agreeable before she wolfs out. She's very social. She gets along with most people, right? So all of a sudden, she connects with her rage. And not only that, she then dives full into a violent scene, fighting Tyler, a Hyde, who is so powerful. She needed to connect with her rage. She needed to connect with her instincts. She needed to protect Wednesday. Enid's a badass. So think about this. Tyler is just fueled on the pleasure system, right? Maybe dopamine is filling his brain, and all he's interested in is killing Wednesday, right? That's his mission. That's what's giving him this, in a sense, like a sexual relief, in a sense, like a sexual release, because this is his pleasure. It's almost as if, and we will compare it on a smaller scale. So think about this. Maybe you're eating healthy, or you're focusing on particular foods, and all of a sudden you just want a Big Mac. All of a sudden you're just craving and you want a Big Mac. And you're starting to think about a Big Mac. And all of a sudden you're getting these natural bursts of dopamine because that's feeding you pleasure. That's giving you pleasure. That's stimulating the reward system in your mind, right? So the more in which you feel this, the more in which dopamine is released, the more in which we're going to want that Big Mac. So the same thing kind of with Tyler, right? Wednesday is the Big Mac. So he just wants to kill her. His rage is so intense that he just wants to kill her. So the focus is just pleasure. For Enid, it's very different. So Tyler, his behavior is in accordance with this more animalistic autopilot. So if you think about this, his rage is very blinding. He just changes and then he goes. Enid had a mission. She knew exactly what she needed to do because she knew that she needed to fight Tyler. She knew that she needed to do everything that she can in order to save Wednesday and save the school. So it's not a source of pleasure. She's coming into her own. She is connected with her psyche. So now instead of her psyche being split, it's a unified psyche. And then on top of that, she's connecting with her rage to use it as a weapon. And this is why she defeats Tyler, in my opinion. is because it's so much more than pleasure, or so much more than an unconscious need for revenge. So for instance, from a psychoanalytic perspective, Enid might be unconsciously projecting onto Tyler her mom. Because the rage has been so intense over the years and buried, there might be a part of Enid that wants to destroy mom, that wants the revenge. The revenge because mom left her to survive, left her alone with her big emotions or big problems. So there's a part of Enid that wants revenge. So maybe from a psychoanalytic perspective, this is unconsciously being projected onto Tyler. And when it's being projected onto Tyler, it intensifies. So it's not only the goal to defeat Tyler, but there's also an unconscious goal to defeat mom. Enid Sinclair is one of the most wonderful characters to analyze because we see this core personality in season 1 and we see it developing and manifesting, but when she connects with her psyche, when she's able to connect with that emotion, her rage, and she wolfs out, it's more than just character development, or it's more than just seeing that Enid is a person and can be very similar to Wednesday in the sense of having anger or not liking certain people like mom. Right? Enid changes. And this is a fantastic example that one's core personality as a result of trauma shifted, and that had a ripple effect, which means our behavior changes, our thought process changes. So we might be more hard on ourselves. So the trauma might be mom. Mom is so harsh. Mom is so terrible, right? Mom is so aggressive or, again, emotionally abusive. And in that sense, we can feel defeated, especially growing up as children, as adolescents. We feel like we're very powerless. But over time, we do have the power to look within. We do have the power to process and understand the psyche. We do have the freedom to choose, and to choose ourselves and to be in line and act in line and in accordance with our genuine sense of self. We have the ability to do that. You can do that on your own through self-help courses like the Ultimate Mental Health Toolbox, Mastering Skills Therapists Use, and that's a self-help course that I created where you're able to understand cognitive perspective, more the dialectical perspective, so how to walk the gray, how to integrate, so then this way you can sit with stress, you can analyze that stress, along with the analytical and existential components. So you can either do it on your own if you'd like, and you can start building that insight, start working on yourself, start working towards your goals and living your best life. In addition, if you want the added support, then you can connect with my team, the Mind People. You can schedule a consultation and you can discuss what you're looking for in terms of achieving your goals. Whether that's therapy, whether that's a workshop, whatever it is, your first step is thinking about yourself and remembering yourself. You might be stuck now, but you don't have to continually be stuck. There are certain things that are outside of our control that we just can't foresee. We just can't understand. We just don't have the power to put certain things in certain places, so then there's the best result for us. The only thing that we have control over is what we do in the moment, and that's our behavior. We have the freedom to choose. We have the freedom to choose ourselves. We don't have to continue to suffer. According to Viktor Frankl, suffering is a choice. You can choose to suffer if you want, okay? It wasn't your fault that you've experienced, let's say, an upbringing like Enid Sinclair. But it is your responsibility, like Enid, to look inward and to transform. It is very possible. You don't need coping strategies for maintenance. What you need is to understand your psyche, to process what is going on in your psyche, what has gone on in your psyche, so then this way you can start to have some power and control over that psyche. This is why therapy is a long-term game, but if you invest in therapy, if you invest in your mental health, and you commit long term, whether you're going to therapy weekly for a year or whether you are just focusing on your mental health, self-help courses and books, exercising, eating right, connecting with people who bring you up instead of bury you and pull you down, then you're going to live in accordance with your best life, your genuine sense of self. It's a long-term commitment, so do you opt in or not? You choose if you want to remain stuck, if you want to remain caged, or like Enid, transform and become a wonderful, fierce werewolf. Now go off and take on the world.